At a dinner party last year for 12 people, one guest spent the evening with his phone out. He has 8,000 followers, and he spent the night angling shots of the food and checking his story views between courses. His audience received a glossy, curated version of the night, but the people actually sitting at the table received only a fraction of his attention. In contrast, another guest never took his phone out. He engaged with everyone, remembered details from months-old conversations, and left without documenting a single moment. The host texted him the next morning to say how much his presence meant. It reveals a tension in the performance economy. In a culture focused on visibility, the people documenting the least often experience the most. Opting out of this performance is frequently met with suspicion. We tend to assume a lack of participation is a confession of a social defect, as if the person who won't show their life must be hiding it. The common narrative suggests that leaving social media is a calm, enlightened choice made by the highly evolved. The reality is usually more complicated. Most people are driven away by a specific catalyst: severe burnout, a breakup, or a period of depression where the gap between real life and the highlight reel becomes unbearable. Sometimes they post something genuine and are met with silence, leaving a residue of vulnerability that doesn't fade. For many, logging off is an act of self-preservation. It is a necessary retreat from a machine that has caused psychological harm. Acknowledging that difficulty sets up a psychological puzzle. Why do people who leave out of necessity eventually report a clarity of thought that they couldn't find while they were still connected? A few weeks after stepping away, people describe a sensation called the quiet. It is the sudden realization that a background noise they hadn't noticed for years has finally stopped. The Journal of Consumer Research published a study that helps explain this shift. They measured the psychological cost of anticipating sharing an experience before it even happens. When you prepare to document an event, your brain splits its processing power. Packaging the moment for an audience actively competes with actually living it. This packaging tax makes memory shallower, forming a weaker emotional attachment. Private people, whether instinctively or consciously, felt this cognitive drain and simply refused to keep paying the tax. The quiet is the return of cognitive bandwidth that was previously lost to the packaging tax. Psychologists use the term private self-consciousness to describe this orientation. An outward-focused brain runs a constant background process, calculating how a moment looks to its audience. When this process is dialed down, the focus turns entirely inward. The brain stops monitoring perception and begins asking, what do I actually think? This inward focus is a direct, unmediated attunement to reality, rather than a detachment from the world. This internal orientation creates a deep sense of self that no longer requires external confirmation to stay stable. Private self-consciousness changes the individual from a performer seeking an audience into a grounded participant in their own life. Choosing this path creates friction. Without a digital feed, you become much harder for people to track. There is an immediate social cost. Friendships that relied entirely on low-effort digital updates often dissolve through neglect once the feed is gone. However, the connections that survive, the people who actually call and make plans, belong to a higher caliber category of relationship. The Harvard study of adult development tracked people for over 80 years and found that the depth of those connections, not the quantity, is the strongest predictor of long-term health and happiness. The non-posting guest from the dinner party was practicing the exact social mathematics that lead to a measurably healthier life. Those who keep their lives private describe a tactile quality of presence in their daily lives. No part of their mind is already coming up with a caption for the moment they are currently in. This state is authorship. Authorship is the feeling that your life, your experiences, and your memories belong to you. You are no longer outsourcing the ownership of your life for public consumption. People who keep their lives private aren't falling behind. They are operating in a psychological state that the rest of the culture is only now beginning to analyze.